Welcome to Springfield Icon's Aldermanic Candidate Forum. Our goal for tonight is to get to know candidates for the Springfield City Council, to educate ourselves and our neighborhoods, to educate the public, and to begin to educate our future aldermen about Icon's agenda. Our ultimate goal is to elect visionary city leaders to help us in our mission to improve the quality of life for Springfield residents in inner-city older neighborhoods. Thanks to our partner organizations, Downtown Springfield, the Springfield Sustainable Design Assessment Team, and the MacArthur Boulevard Association. We're grateful for the participation of candidates in attendance tonight and for their willingness to serve on the City Council. I will introduce, actually I'm going to ask Polly to introduce candidates because I can't see the candidates from here and I haven't memorized all of them yet. So as Polly calls your name, will you stand up and wave to our audience, please?
All right, we'll start with Ward 1, that's Chuck Redpath, and Reverend T. Ray Duncan, Tyrone Case, Jamie Adair, Herman Senior, Billy Bishop, Scott McFarland, Dave Varner, Alderman Sam Cannon, Andrew Proctor, Dominic Watson, Michael Higgins, Alderman Joe McMillan, Sarah Patrick, Ernie Slopak, Alderman Chris Tile, Jeff Donellan, Tony Smargesi, and Phil Childs from Ward 10. Sitting in the back is unopposed Alderman Doris Turner from Ward 3 and Alderman Corey Joe from Ward 6.
Thanks, Polly. I'm going to do a brief overview of the agenda tonight because it's a little bit complicated because we have so many candidates. I will we'll proceed with a question and answer session until about 8:30. I'll introduce an issue of importance to ICON with a statement of our position and some additional information that was provided to the candidates on Friday. One of our partners or members will ask a specific question that can be answered yes or no. Candidates will be asked to vote by a show of hands, whether they are in favor of the proposal or whether they oppose. Candidates, as you vote, please keep your hands up so that our vote recorders, who are sitting in the front row, can record your votes accurately. 2 to 3 candidates will have an opportunity to speak about a question for 2 minutes each. Due to the large number of candidates and the need to keep within a reasonable time frame, we have timekeepers who will let you know when 2 minutes are up. Actually, they'll let you know when you have 30 seconds left and then when your 2 minutes are up. And at that time, we ask you to hand over the microphone so that we can keep this going and end at a reasonable hour and that everybody gets to speak. We'll be tracking who speaks and we'll call first upon candidates who haven't yet spoken. We wish we could allow each candidate to explain their position in more detail, but candidates, if you'd like to add to what you say tonight, I'd be happy to post that on your bio page on our website. So you can email those to me if you have something that you just really need to say when we're done. Around 8:30, we'll wrap it up with the Q&A with a short closing, and then we'll have an informal meet and greet until 9 p.m. At this time, I'm going to sit in the audience as the moderator, and so that I can face the candidates. Very close. All right. The first topic that we have tonight is responsible property ownership. ICON believes good property owners, good landlords, and all of Springfield benefit when property is maintained according to city code and problem property owners are held accountable. To resolve long-term issues with problem and absentee property owners, the city needs to consistently and proactively enforce problem property laws, efficiently and legally foreclose on problem properties, and register non-owner occupied properties to provide a point of contact for complaints and legal action. Michelle? Favor? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Vote recorders, please record your votes. Those opposed? All right. Would someone like to speak? Would someone like to speak about this issue? Sam?
Yes.
Remember, Sam, you're speaking first. You're not getting a lot of chances. Make sure this is your mark.
Does this work? We have the ordinance that now requires vacant properties that have one or more building code violations to be registered. And the registration is limited to 3 years. After 3 years, if they're not, they have to be either demolished or fixed up, corrected, so that they meet the city code. So we've now, that ordinance we passed about a little more than 3 years ago, added 3 years ago back last October. And so the problem is now making sure that the city enforces this ordinance and make sure that when the 3-year cycle is over, that if these properties are not fixed or demolished, that these fines are imposed of, I think it's $750 a day. And eventually, they'll amount to so much that there'll be more than the property is worth. The city can then foreclose on that property and take the property. I think the purpose behind the ordinance is not for the city to take these properties over, but for the properties to be fixed up and made livable and become a good part of our community. So, thank you.
Someone else like Joe?
Real briefly, I misunderstood the question. In the past, ICON has pushed for a registration requirement for the 15,000 rental properties within the city, so I thought that was what the question was directed at. I'd like to change my vote. I'm strongly in favor of registration for empty properties, vacant properties, and those that have 3 violations that accumulate. So, excuse me for misunderstanding the question.
Non-owner occupied properties, so rental properties. We voted then.
I would like to change my vote as well. I misunderstood the question the opposite way that Joe misunderstood it. So I'm not in favor of all rental properties in the city having to be registered now.
Only if it's a non-resident housing, right?
Are you, Michelle?
Okay, I'm going to reread the question and clarify. Registration program for non-owner occupied properties. So that would be any rental property, not necessarily just ones that have code violations. Those would be included, but even a rental property without code violations, so that there would be a point of contact for police, fire, public works, if there is an emergency or a situation where the city needs to get a hold of somebody.
I need a little clarification, I'm sorry.
Sure.
So if I own a duplex and I live in one side and somebody else lives on the other side, I'd have to register that property?
I don't know about that, because you would be residing
What
on,
if I live in the house next door I own, but I have to register that property?
Yes.
Okay, I want to agree.
for a registration program for non-owner occupied properties. So if the owner is not occupying the property, it would need to be registered. Now, this is not necessarily fees. This is different than what Sam is talking about. Sam is talking about properties that have code violations, and you have to pay a quarterly fee to the city. This does not necessarily involve fees. This is simply registration so that there is a point of contact. If the city, for whatever reason, needs to track down the owner to make them aware of a situation with the property, there would be a point of contact.
Phil had a very good point about,
Speak up.
I think Phil had a very good point about whether or not the person is a resident of Springfield or even Sangamon County. We have a lot of local landlords that take care of things and do a very good job. A lot of our problems, when you look at like the Valley, or what happened with the Bel Air, and what has happened with several other properties, have been owners who don't live here. They're not part of this community. They don't have any reason to care about this community. I think on the point that Phil made, if we're looking at someone who is a non-resident owner that is owning the rental property, I think I fully agree that I would love to see those people registered because we have a hard time tracking them down. I know that when we had the issue with 209 South English, that took me the better part of 5 years to get that torn down. Part of the problem was the fact that the person who owned it wasn't here. Then they turned around and sold it, and that person still wasn't here. And then they sold it again, and that third person still wasn't here. They finally ended up tracking the person down and getting it foreclosed on and torn down. That would be very, very helpful. However, to add an additional burden on the people who live here, who are part of this community, I'm not sure that that is the direction that you really want to go.
The question does not distinguish between whether or not the owner is a resident of Sangamon County. I wrote the question, and in Enos Park we have a problem with not only absentee landlords, we have very prominent, well-recognized names who are slumlords in Enos Park.
Excuse me. I find that term highly offensive, and I appreciate
Responsible
you
landlords.
using a different term for that. It offends me. Thank you.
We have both local and non-local property owners that do not always take responsibility for their properties.
At this point, I'd like to ask how many people were confused about the question and would like a revote. Would you raise your hands? All right, let's revote. How many would vote in favor of, would you like to read it again, Michelle?
Would you support a registration program for non-owner occupied properties?
Favor, raise your hand.
Those opposed? Those opposed?
All right. Scott?
This is a major issue in my area of town. We've actually lost lives because of issues with rental properties. The recent one being only a few months ago. So I do believe that there needs to be registration involved so we know who landlords are. A large majority of them are doing what they're supposed to be doing. But we need to have a list, so when we have properties like in my northeast side of town that have padlocks in the back door so you can't get out of a fire or a smoke hazard, we know who the landlord is, we can figure out what needs to be done. So I do fully agree with that. Again, this is a life or death situation for my folks in the northeast end, and that's unfortunately the way it's been.
Anybody else like to speak?
This is working? Yeah, the padlock on our back door is only there when Patty's mad, so I hope nobody's confused about that. But as far as the comment about responsible owners being subjected to something, responsible owners aren't going to have a problem with this because they're responsible. So, right, so, you know, we're talking about the ones that aren't and that need a boost or need some incentive to comply. So, of course, I'm for it.
Anyone else?
We have time for another comment. So I just see Sam and Chris, and I would say you spoke last, so we'll go back to Sam. Thank you.
Now that I fully understand the question, I apologize. I think this is a much needed ordinance. Peoria has it, it works, we heard from them earlier last year, it works very good there. And even if the property owner is local, some of these properties are a trust, you can't even figure out who the real owner is. And if the owner is out of town or out of the area, let's say not in Sangamon or one of the surrounding counties, there should also be a requirement that the owner have a local agent who can answer the problems that the property has.
Thank you. I agree with what Sam's saying about a local agent. However, I would need to ask John Sadowski with the Housing Department to see what kind of cost and manpower we'd be talking about for something this extensive. If we were looking at something where maybe we were making people register as soon as there was a violation of any kind, that would start the database, and then maybe later we could look at, looking at all rental properties. But I understand what you were saying about the issues with certain areas, with certain landlords, with certain owners. There are issues in Ward 8 that are similar. Down MacArthur, I've got people who have let the house turn over and over and over again, and we know which ones they are, and the housing inspectors are very vigilant about it. However, my biggest concern would be the cost and the scope of the project, trying to do something that major Do we even have a rough estimate of an idea of how many rental properties total between houses, duplexes, and everything there are in town?
All right, we're ready for question number 2. Judy?
I'm Judy Bingham. I am president of the Vinegar Hill Neighborhood Association. My question, and this kind of follows up with the padlocks, would you support a change to increase the number of housing inspectors in the city from the current 4 inspectors?
Can I have a clarification on that first? Do you have a specific number in mind, or you just want to increase it arbitrarily?
I think we just want to increase it. I'm not sure that we have a specific number, but I think we would like to have enough.
What is enough?
I'm not sure I know what enough is, but it's not enough now.
All those in
Favor? Raise your hands. Would you increase the number of inspectors? All those opposed? Would you like to speak to that?
The reason being, I don't want to agree to something. I don't want to agree to increasing something when I don't know what we're increasing it to. Maybe I would vote be in favor of it if there was an infinite number, but you're just saying let's increase it, and there's no end to what you want it to increase to be.
To follow up with Herman's answer, that's exactly what we got to look at. We have 4 inspectors is not enough, but 10 is too many. We got to have a reasonable amount, and it's important that we live within our means, and our budgets are tight. So we got to remember this is expensive ventures, and we got to make sure we stay with a tight budget. I would not be in favor of doubling it or going to 10 inspectors, but maybe adding a couple more to help out. I think that's a reasonable amount.
Michael?
Yes, I'm in favor of doing this, but also we have to keep in mind, we have to use our inspectors and coordinate them better with the different wards so that it's more efficient, because I know property owners who wait for inspectors and it slows down their job. So if we increase it, we have to improve it.
Jim?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm Jim Donovan, candidate in Ward 9. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. It is an issue that has been a problem with the city for quite some time. The number of inspectors presently is not enough. What ultimately that number is, I think, is something that should be studied. But it's got to be studied, it's got to be looked at in a couple different fronts. Obviously, that's an executive function, the number of people that's hired in a particular position. But we got to be cognizant of the fact that Alderman obviously set the budget, so there's got to be the funds appropriated, and money's got to be there for such things. Typically when you look at adding positions, a lot of times you look at positions that potentially either do a couple of things. One, either enhance the community, which is what would happen here in this case, or 2, would bring in dollars to the community. This happens to be, there's some problems, as we all know, in the community of Springfield that need to be addressed. Housing inspectors are a key part of that, and increasing the number is something that would be advantageous.
Anybody else?
I think increasing the number is a good idea, but another thing that ought to be considered is increasing technology and allowing these people to be more efficient when they're out there. iPads or some device that they can just record their information right away and send it back. Wi-Fi or some other method will save them travel time and getting around time, and maybe they can do more with the same amount of people. So we should also look at making it more efficient so that more can be done with the same number, maybe 1 or 2 additional people.
I don't have a mic right here, but I think. Okay. Is it working? No? Yeah, okay. Well,
Yeah, it's got to go green.
Technology. There we go. Yeah, you're right. Andrew Proctor, candidate for Ward 5. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I think it's something also that we need a neighborhood coordinator to help coordinate the departments of the city.
because it's too many times that these issues that are brought before the city departments, they either get lost in the radar, or there's radar screen, or that they need to be taken care of. So yes, it's also, at staff level, we need more inspectors, but also we need a neighborhood coordinator to help coordinate the city departments so that we're effectively going after these properties in an efficient manner.
Someone else? Deb?
So what I'm hearing is if we increase efficiency, then there might not be any need to increase the inspectors if we can get the departments working closer together and better the proficiency of the departments.
Someone else?
Sure.
Corey?
So I just want to make it clear, and I think the current aldermen that are on the city council, the Public Works Department is already implementing new efficient standards. They are going out with iPads. Our housing inspectors next spring will be out with iPads out in the field, communicating directly back to the home base, which is City Hall. So that is already in place. I didn't vote at all because first off, just like Jim Donald just said, it's really a function of the mayor, and he or she would have to present that budget to the council and figure out where to put those positions in which department they see best, and then we would vote on that. But we're already moving toward more efficient standards with electronic data processing and the iPad system. It'll be back to home base.
It was first Scott and then Joe.
I'm going to go back to the property I mentioned earlier, and the fact that when we lost a life over there were countless issues with that property, and it hadn't been inspected for several years because we didn't have inspectors going over there. So for me, the answer is emphatic yes. Again, I keep hitting this part, but we've lost lives over this issue in the Northeast End. Period.
I'd also be in favor of increasing not only our inspectors from 4 to 5, but also we've got 2 enforcement attorneys now, one in municipal court and one that handles cases in circuit court. And as we increase our enforcement, we'll need more activity from our lawyers. We've got 214 firefighters and roughly 250 police, and to increase the other part of the enforcement apparatus makes a lot of sense, and possibly making our police and fire more efficient to be able to afford it. Thanks.
Anybody else?
I'd just like to say, if you just look at a simple ratio, you have 4 inspectors taking care of 10 wards. That makes, you can do the math. And as Joe has said, if you increase it to 5, you would at least have 1 inspector covering 2 wards.
Our next issue.
Our next issue is a cleaner Springfield. ICON believes that city government is responsible for the health of all residents by removing garbage and waste from all areas of the city regularly, proactively, and efficiently. All residential properties in Springfield are required to have garbage service, but we estimate that there are over 3,000 that don't. They leave their garbage for neighborhood leaders and the city to pick up. As a result, taxpayers and concerned citizens pay for picking up garbage for these garbage scofflaws. Moving payment for garbage service to monthly city water, light, and power bills ensures all residents pay their fair share and taxpayers don't end up subsidizing lawbreakers. Tony?
Yes. Thank you. Hello. My name is Tony Nudo, and I'm the treasurer for the Springfield Area Landlord Association. The question is, would you support collecting garbage fees through the CWLP bill in order to ensure complete compliance within the city? Thank you.
All those in favor?
Raise your hand.
Opposed?
Raise your hand. All right, who would like to speak to this issue?
Hi, I'm Sarah Delano Pavlik, running for Ward 7. These questions are hard to raise your hand yes or no because they're more complicated questions than that. On this one, I did raise my hand yes because personally, I would be in support of that. I've lived in a city where we had that. I thought it worked very well. It was very easy. It was one less check to write. However, I do know when this came up a couple of years ago, there was tremendous opposition to it. So if I am elected, I view my role as advocating for the people of Ward 7, and before I could take a position, I would need to determine how the people of Ward 7 view this issue, and at this time, I can't say that I do have their views. So yes, I'm definitely very open to it, but again, I would view my role as representing the voters of Ward 7.
We'll go to Dave. That's Billy, I'm sorry.
Yes, my name is William Bishop III. I'm running for Ward 2, Alderman, and I definitely believe that there needs to be a system put in place to deal with this fly problem in our community. We have a major problem out in Ward 2 with that. I mean, I live right there on Cornell Street. I can just watch people go late night and drop mattresses off by the side of the road and they go to disposals right across the street. So I really believe that if we put, I mean, for years they've been asking to get the database from the local haulers and see who has garbage service and don't. I think by putting that on the electric bill or the city water light bill, but also give the citizen or the household or business owner a chance to send in their copy of their bill showing that they already have service so they won't get charged by the city. Just don't put a charge out there and don't give people the opportunity to show that they have garbage service. And by doing that, they'll be showing that they have garbage service, and if they don't have garbage service, charge them for garbage service. And I'll go one step farther. I believe that we should have a department in our city that deals with sanitation and recycling. Because you can go to any other city in America, usually the city has a sanitation department that deals with garbage and refuse and so forth. And, I mean, you're looking at jobs that people that have, and you're also looking at cleaning up your community. Thank you.
I get the order so far. Yeah, except that I think Reverend Cummins has spoken less, so we'll go with Reverend Cummins, and then we'll go to Dave and Sam and Dominic. And Doris and Doris. We'll start with Reverend.
For the sake of clarification, I would support that if we had a Department of Sanitation. But what we're saying in the question, what you're saying rather, in the question is that not only do we have to pay for our sanitation individually, we then have to turn around and also be taxed a fee, each one of us. Am I correct?
No, it would, the fee that you currently pay to your hauler would then appear on city water, light, and power bill, just as the recycling fee moved last year.
Okay. And I guess I'm not clear, how will that eliminate the problem? We're just moving it from our individual provider to CWLP bill.
Right. Part of the problem right now is that we don't know who these 3,000 people are. Once we had the ability to compare who gets an electric bill, not an electric bill, a gas bill, who gets a water bill, with people who do or do not have garbage, we would be able to tell the difference between theirs. And those are presumably the people who also need garbage service that don't currently have it.
And maybe one of the aldermen who can address that, because if I'm not mistaken, the city currently has a means, a way of tracking who does not have services.
Were you asking for a clarification from Alderman? All right, Doris raised her hand. Can you provide that?
I can. There was a recent article.
Could we have a microphone?
Sorry. There was a recent article in the newspaper that said that I had introduced 10 ordinances and passed 9 of those. The one ordinance that I introduced along with Alderman Joe that I could not pass was the ordinance that would have placed the waste hauler bill, your fee on the Citywide Light and Power bill. And I will tell you that I'm going to work very, very diligently to bring that ordinance back and hopefully pass it. It's a mechanism that will definitely be a benefit to our inner city older neighborhoods. Right now, there is already an ordinance on the books that says every household has to have a waste hauler. That ordinance is already on the books. The problem is everyone does not have a waste hauler, and we don't have a appropriate mechanism to identify who those individuals are. What we do know is that every house has CWLP. So if that fee, the same fee that you're paying now, is placed on the CWLP bill, we will ensure that every household has a waste hauler. It would significantly cut down on not only fly dumping, but there are individuals who use their garages as their way of the garbage collection, and just sits there and sits there and sits there. And I know that every alderman has had instances where that has happened in their area. So this is definitely something that will address a lot of the issues that we have around garbage and around garbage collection. I think that one of the reasons why, I heard someone say there was a lot of opposition to it. I think one of the reasons why there was a lot of opposition is because there was a lot of misinformation that was put out in the public preview. And there were a lot of people who had a lot more money than we did, and they got that misinformation out there, and we had a hard time countering it. But I will say, definitively, you will be able to choose your own hauler. The waste hauler you have now is the waste hauler that you will have. You will be able to have the same fee schedule that you have now. Whatever you're paying now, that's what you would be paying. And there's no additional fee that's placed on anyone for that service, for it being on your CWLP bill. There was some concern that it would be an issue with the processing within CWLP, and I think that that concern has been addressed because we did place the recycling fee is now collected through your CWLP bill. If you look on your CWLP bill, you'll see on there that recycling is collected through your CWLP bill. So we know that that works. It has worked very successfully. So we know that we have the ability to place that garbage collection fee on your CWLP bill. So I think that it's definitely something that I will be working very, very diligently to bring that back.
Let me say at this point, we have Dave, Sam, Dominic, Scott, Jim, Chuck, and Mike who would like to talk, but Dominic has not spoken. So let's ask Dominic if you would like to speak.
Can everyone hear me? Yes. Dominic Watson, write-in candidate for Ward 5 Alderman. It's an honor to be here today, so thank you. To me, this is a no-brainer. It's a significant issue throughout our ward. Neighbors throughout the ward have constantly complained in regards to this issue. So for me, it's a no-brainer when I have neighbors constantly complaining about their sewage drains being clogged due to trash, also leaf pickups and things like that. So for me, this is a no-brainer. It's absolute support in regards to this. So thank you.
Let's go back to Chuck, who's only spoken once, I think, for everybody else.
Yeah, I'm glad that Alderman Turner spoke up because those are almost the questions that I had. You know, you always worry about too much government in people's business, and if this is the case that the system is set up right now to do it, I could be in favor of that, but I can't believe that there's not administrative costs that are tied up into this. Of course, that's what my concern is too. So, you know, I'm willing to be convinced, but okay, I'm willing to be convinced, but you know, this issue was brought up several years ago when I sat on the city council before, and I can just tell you that there's a lot of variables out there about senior citizens sharing garbage service and stuff like that, and we got to make sure that we include everybody. So somebody that's on a fixed income who can't even afford the garbage bill is not stuck paying something on their CWLP bill they can't afford.
We're out of time on this issue, so we have Dave, Sam, Jim, and Mike. Anybody dying to speak on this issue of those four people? Now you talk. Let's give them, all right, 30 seconds.
And that, my question was, well, first, yes, it seems like a no-brainer. I don't know who was opposed to this because it seems like it would catch these 3,000 or so that are out there. My question, though, was about, we now have a choice, and there's contracts, and would CWLP administer those contracts and put it out for bid and get, you know, competition among the haulers?
Sam, do you want to speak?
Well,
30 seconds.
just, I mean, a lot of the points I was going to make were covered by Doris, but I did want to point out that the current system, the waste haulers have to give the city the addresses of every address that they serve, and the city is supposed to know, have the address of each address where a person lives at. So comparing the two, the city is supposed to be able to figure out who does not have waste hauling service and then enforce that requirement. That's how it's supposed to work.
Jim?
Okay, on this issue, a few years ago, my understanding is the city made it very clear in the ordinance, changed the city code to say that it is the responsibility of the landowner to make sure that there is garbage service. The difficulty the city has under the present situation is the fact that the haulers are required to report, I believe on a monthly basis, the customers they have in the city, and then that information is then, put into the city system, and it's not as efficient as a system as it could be. The difficulty I have with this issue is, if I was a private business owner, and I'm not, but if I was, I would not want a government collecting my revenues, so to speak. So I think there needs to be some discussion on here on how to make the system that we have in place now more efficient, because I don't think you'll find anybody in this, up at this table, or let alone in the room, that doesn't want 100% compliance.
Mike will let Tony speak only because he has it, and then you.
I think this works. Tony, Smart Jesse, Alderman, Ward 9 candidate, and I would just like to say I did vote no on this question, and I would be willing to change my mind or at least look at it. The only reason I voted no against it is because just walk in the neighborhoods. You've got people that come to me and say, hey, I'm a single person, so I don't generate much trash. And the person next to me is in the same situation. She's a single person, doesn't generate much garbage, and they both, combine their bill together, and they only have to pay for one service. And I think there's a waiver form right now with the city. I'm not sure, but I think that needs to definitely be in place. I think we need to look at that, and if that's an option. There's also another guy that I talked to that was he owns 3 properties in my ward, and he's I think he only pays for two services, and he takes his garbage to the other one. So I mean, if there's a way to monitor that somehow and get the waiver, then I would be for that. But I don't think everybody should have to pay for garbage service if they can prove that that they are the services with another, or at least they're sharing the service.
I'll make my
Very brief, please.
And I see Mr. Lugo in the audience from the Landlords Association. We lost one. For the Landlords Association, and I think that he would be for this because far too often responsible landlords are lumped into a category of not being responsible for their garbage and blamed for other people's problems. And so responsible landlords feel the wrath of this just because they're landlords and they take care of their property. They're lumped together. And another thing about when we did this ordinance, I believe that this was not about business, it was about residential. So, as a business owner, I can still pay.
The next area that we'll talk about is visionary city leadership. ICON believes in proactive, efficient government, not just reacting to the same old problems. Comparable sized cities have city planning departments with multiple city and urban planners on staff, but Springfield does not have a dedicated trained resource to provide expertise and consistency needed to adequately address these challenges. As a result, surrounding cities with planners and comprehensive plans are growing faster than Springfield. Springfield growth estimated around 5%, Bloomington 27%, Champaign over 20%. Bloomington 27%, I'm sorry. Increased population growth has multiple benefits, including increased tax revenue, job growth, city pride, and a larger pool of potential employees to help support business growth. A city planner could identify strategic development initiatives, plan intentional economic development of key properties in Springfield, plan incentives to encourage development within city limits using existing infrastructure, and work with city leaders to coordinate other initiatives specific to Springfield. Lisa?
Good evening. I'm Lisa Stott. I'm the co-chair of the SDAT Action Committee, which stands for Sustainable Design Assessment Team, and we're working on downtown housing. So the question is, would you be in favor of hiring a city planner with specific expertise and training to manage a vision for planning and development in our historic capital city?
All those in favor, raise your hands. All right, I think we're unanimous. Thank you very much.
Sarah, Scott, Corey, Dominic, Andrew.
Is it on? Yeah. Again, I just want to point out how difficult it is to answer these answer these questions. The devil is always in the details. Of course, we would all love to have lots of home inspectors. We would all love to have city planners. We would all love to have all these things. But we all know that we don't have a lot of money. The budget is as tight as it can be, and for every one of these things that we want to add, we have to either cut something else or raise taxes. And so, yes, I can sit up here and I can say, I would love a city inspector or a city planner. That would be great, but when it comes down to it, if I'm on the city council, I'm gonna have to vote to take something else away or to increase your taxes, and that makes it a much more difficult vote. So, all I can say is the devil are in the details. The devil is in the details. It's a wonderful idea, and I would like to see it happen, but you can't just consider it ineffective.
I deal with this issue every day as a member of this 186 school board. As you mentioned, our growth is anemic. Between 2000 and now, we've seen an increase of about 5,000 people. So it's less than 5%. It's closer to about 3.5 to 4%. And at the same time, people are running out to Chatham, to Sherman, to Rochester, to Riverton, or because of lack of planning, they're running to Piper Glen, to Panther Creek, to the west side of town that's outside of our school district. So they're going to Plains schools or New Berlin schools. And in the process, our inner city, our northeast side of town, is dwindling in population. So we're putting all these resources, which are good, on the west side of town, on the Dirksen Parkway, but nothing inside our inner area. The northeast side, you drive down Sangamon, you drive down North Grand, you're going to see empty storefronts all the way down. We need to have a planner that's going to work with our zoning, work with our marketing, and ensure that we start bringing more businesses in, more industry in. I've got the Pillsbury plant that has sit vacant for longer than I've been alive, okay? And with that, it's an eyesore. I wake up every morning, I see it. It just sits there. Why are we not playing around that? Why are we not bringing in new industry? We've lost 2,000 state employees over the past few decades. Why are we not filling that void with something else? So we need to start playing this out. And again, I go back to my work on the school board. I'm a tireless advocate for 186, and I'll continue to be an advocate when I'm at the city council, because you want to bring more people in, You need the city to be working with its school district more, to drive people to 186, to let them know that those are good schools too. Because when you start talking to folks, they say, well, I like Springfield, but I want to move out to New Orleans School District, we have a problem.
Corey.
Well, first off, I am for a city planner, but I would agree with Sarah Pavlik. First off, you got to figure out where you need to restructure city government. There's not this endless amount of cash sitting in a pot somewhere that we can just pull from and hire a city planner or city planners. I think it's very valuable to have a city planner for all the things Scott just said. However, you've got to think about restructure. You know, when I was talking about running for mayor, I had talked about how you've got to fundamentally restructure city government if you're going to be able to afford positions like a city planner. It's needed, but you've got to peel the layers back and find out where we can restructure within the blueprint of city government before we can go out and champion a city planner position. I think if a mayor has the will and the drive to want to do that and work with aldermen, I think we can get that.
Dominic will be next.
I think this is one of the most pressing issues that we'll hear during this election cycle. It is strongly needed for the city to have this particular position is so important. It's disparaging when I see all the economic development being pushed out west, where our ward is lacking economic development. Ward 5 in particular is lacking so much economic development. We have over, just in downtown alone, we have close to 1 million square feet of vacant property. What can be done with it? What can we as a city do? And I think it's a part of being accountable to our neighbors and our citizens. Part of being accountable is if we have to find somewhere in the budget to hire for this position, that's what we need to do. And I agree with Alderman Joe that it will not be easy, and we'll have to work with the new mayor or whoever is elected in that position to carve out money in the budget.
Andrew, and then Herman. Oh, that's it? We can't, just those two, Andrew and Herman. It's gonna go. Anything to say, Phil?
Phil, do you want to move to the middle?
I do think those are three people that haven't said much, so.
Thank you. It's with the city planners. It's also about implementation of what we have for current resources.
So we have great plans that are sitting on file cabinets over at City Hall. The Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission puts these together for us, but they don't seem to be implemented very well. You can take, for example, doing the bicycle path on 2nd Street just after the Route 66 festival. So of course, bike paths got a bad name because everybody felt like they were in a parking lot right at that moment on a Friday evening. So it's not just about city planner, it's about implementing the resources that you have. And also I think having a city planner is needed because they can also help with zoning decisions. When the city council decides certain zoning variances, I think they need to have an expert city planner to help with those recommendations. And someone who wakes up every day and says, how can we make this city better because of the plan we put together that we thought of. Because right now, a lot of zoning variances are required for halfway houses that are growing up through our, popping out through our neighborhoods. And those things aren't regulated. So that's a different problem there. But if those are not zone allowed to pop up because the zoning does not allow that, because that's the plan we put together based on the expertise of a city planner, then we wouldn't be having these problems with troubled halfway houses.
I think one of the problems, if we do have a city planner, they would come in and look at the way our city is structured and look at the taxes boundaries and say, well, how come you have so many houses with Springfield addresses and the kids going to other schools? So if we can get that problem fixed, I think we get some more revenue generated from our taxes that are already out there being used. And we need to start counting the kids that go to our Springfield schools because I have 3 graduates of the Springfield Public Schools. one which graduated cum laude from college that went to Southeast High School. So I'm not ashamed that my kids go to Southeast High School and have graduated from Southeast High School. So for the realtors, there's nothing wrong with Southeast High School. There's nothing wrong with Springfield High School. There's nothing wrong with Lanphier High School. So if we start touting our own self and blowing our own horns, then when we do get this position for city planner and start building up our schools, I think the problem will take care of itself.
We're going to go to Phil, because Phil we do.
Thank you. I'm Phil Childs, and I'm running for Ward 10 Alderman, where all this development, all these jobs are being pushed. And I just want to thank the rest of you for sending all this development our way. But, seriously, I think it'd be a great idea to have a city planner, but a city planner in and of itself is not enough. The problem is we need to be much more aggressive in economic development here in Springfield. We need to go out and seek businesses to come to our city. We have a great city. A great city, we have good schools. I'm a product of Springfield schools as well. And we just need to convince more businesses to come. As the jobs come, the sales tax revenue goes up, and we're able to do some of these things that we want to do. But it's not enough just to have a planner. But a planner is important, because if we had a city planner, we'd probably actually have roads that went all the way out to the subdivisions in my ward.
And we don't, okay, it's my 30 seconds. And actually, we don't have those. If you take a drive out by the new YMCA on Lenhart Road or on West Isles, or go out to Archer Elevator and drive those roads at night when it's raining. And then you'll appreciate the fact that you've actually got streets with curbs and gutters, because we don't have it. So a city planner will help, but it's not the total solution.
All right, we need to move on to our next issue, neighborhood-friendly zoning. And we actually have 4 questions for zoning. ICON believes that consistent zoning that preserves the character and property values of residential neighborhoods. Every zoning variance or other action opens wide the door to additional changes in the character and property values of neighborhood, because in fairness, the city council can't give zoning relief to one person or property and not another. Zoning action consistent with the residential character of a neighborhood, inconsistent with the residential character of a neighborhood, damages the long-term stability and property values of neighborhoods. Brian?
Brian Johnsrud, Historic Westside Neighborhood Association. As an alderman, will you participate in training offered by the Regional Planning Commission to understand zoning and the impact of City Council zoning decisions on residents of Springfield? Yes or no?
Another.
Ernie Slowtop, seeking Ward 8. 2 things need to be done with zoning. Number 1, look at the map now. Is it really realistic the way it's drawn for the neighborhoods, for retail, for commercial, for all that? Check it out. Let's update the map, and then let's stick with it. Then you know what's R1. You know what can be duplex, and when you buy a house, you know what's going to go in that vacant lot behind you because it's zoned, and we're not going to change it. If you set the zoning and set the standards and understand the standards, and then we move forward and don't change them, everybody's on the same page, and we know what we're going to get before we get into it.
Everyone hasn't spoken. We'll come back to Dave.
My name is Tyrone.
This is better.
Hello. My name is Tyrone Landon Pace. I'm a candidate in Ward 2. And I have served as a housing code enforcement inspector for the city of Urbana. I've also served on the zoning committee for the county board. And I have enforced zoning ordinances. And I will definitely participate in any training to further my knowledge in that area. But I know how important zoning is and being consistent in your zoning regulations. So I just would like to reiterate that I would definitely support participating in training.
either Dave or Scott. And Dave.
There's no more mic, so give us a second.
We'll let you guys use our microphone, but give it back because it's the only one that works.
A comment about the change, being afraid, or not afraid, but being against change once we set a zoning. I don't think we have to do that. We have a process. I've watched the city council do it. It's pre-screened. It goes to them for a vote. It's not just, doesn't just happen. And we have to be open to change, because I can tell you, my wife was president of Helping Hands, and when they needed to move 2 years ago, ran into all kinds of problems, justified. But now they're moving, and had they not had a zoning change, they'd be stuck on the tracks, or they had to move the first time. But anyway, you have to be open to it. You can't just say, this is it, and that's that. It's going to be fluid.
That's it. One more? Okay. Oh, Stevie? You guys spoke, and I'm not asking you one to speak. You did, all right. Sam, last comment.
Sam Campbell's Ward 5.
It's not working.
Okay, well. All right, well, I'll just talk loud. Okay. I'm Sam Cannon, the Ward 5 Alderman, and the Regional Planning Commission did have these classes the last 4 years, and I went to the class, and it was very instructive and very worthwhile. And one thing I think we have to be cognizant of is zoning is to always follow and take into account the interests of the people who live in that neighborhood, because those are the people that are affected by the zoning. Just earlier this year, I had a zoning case in my ward where a halfway house wanted to expand from 5 to 7 people. 5 people, they didn't need any zoning relief, but for 7, they needed a variance. And the neighbors came to me and they were opposed to it, and I recommended that they go and testify at the Planning and Zoning Commission. They did. They then got a recommendation against the variance by the Planning and Zoning Commission because of their voicing their concerns, and then that means it required a 2/3 yes vote at the City Council. Well, when it came down to it, at the end, the petitioner realized he probably wasn't going to get the 2/3 vote, and so just dropped the whole thing. So the neighbors got what they wanted. The problem with we have with the halfway houses now and these transitional houses is that if they are 5 or less in the house, they do not need any zoning variance, and you can have a residential neighborhood, and all of a sudden one of these halfway houses plops down in the middle of the residential neighborhood. So I'm working on an ordinance to give neighbors the input on whether those should be plopped in a residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Our next question will be asked by David Farrell.
I'm David Farrell. I'm a member of the, I don't think I needed, when I was a little kid, the nuns said they could hear me a block away. I'm David. Speak direct. I'm David Farrell. I broke it. I'm David. I didn't have a problem, David. Yeah. I'm David Farrell. In case there's any doubt. I'm an active member of the MacArthur Boulevard Association. And you can see from the discussion right here on zoning why this next issue is so very important for older areas. And that is, would you support specific overlay, zoning overlays in older neighborhoods or older business commercial corridors in the city of Springfield? Instead of every suggestion of doing something with zoning to increase the entrepreneur opportunities, the opportunities for business and commerce in an area, that there's an overlay that would be over an area and it would have a number of specific circumstances, conditions, limitations, and opportunities to create business opportunities in some of our older business corridors. Would you support zoning overlays?
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Do you support zoning overlays for older commercial corridors?
And just to confirm, you mentioned that there would be some room for variance in that as well, too. Right?
Right? No.
What's the variance?
We haven't worked out the details, and actually this came out of the MacArthur Boulevard Association, and was a recommendation of their master plan that a zoning overlay be put in place to allow some consistency in those very small, short lots where commercial properties have come up to replace older residential. So those in favor, please raise your hands.
Quick question on clarification.
Yes, clarification.
Is it, you're talking about like having a regional specific goal for like that corridor?
Yes.
Like you have a plan for that area and that's what you want to help for that area, you have a goal for that area?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
And each one of these would be different, and they'd be voted on individually, right?
There's a question about that. MacArthur Boulevard asked for their zoning overlay specifically, and my understanding is that the response of the city was, we don't want to do that for just one area. We want to propose a zoning overlay that would apply to all older commercial areas. So I'm not aware of the status of that particular request, but we're interested in hearing if you would be in favor of that kind of idea, a zoning overlay for older commercial corridors, yes or no? All those in favor, raise your hand, yes? Okay, another question.
Just before we vote, can you give us a good example of specifically what you're talking about?
A recommendation of the Enos Park master plan. Again, MacArthur has their own master plan and it recommended a zoning overlay as well. But if you look at MacArthur, if you look at North Grand, if you look at 9th Street, you have such a hodgepodge of zoning. 9th Street, you have everything from single-family residential R1 all the way up to B2, which is automotive, and everything else in between. MacArthur suffers from the same issues. So the concept of a zoning overlay is to create a zoning designation that would be consistent. Now again, it may not be the same for MacArthur as it is for 9th Street or it is for North Grand, but to create some consistency so that you no longer have this hodgepodge that's evolved over the years, where people have gotten variances or things have changed over the decades, and you have single-family residences, you have restaurant and retail, you have light automotive, in some cases you even have I-1 on the same corridor with a single-family house.
So does that mean that the people who are there now will be grandfathered in? So that you're not going to subject people to zoning that's going to change their status right now? Or are they going to be grandfathered in, or is it going to be everything has to change?
I am not making a specific proposal, but my understanding with zoning is that typically the existing use is grandfathered in.
I would have to say, and I think a number of people hearing some of the whispered comments between some of the people here on the panel, I think that I would be open to hearing the concept, but until I see, as someone else very eloquently put earlier, the devil in the details, I don't necessarily know that by my raising my hand to say that I'm open to listening, that I'm locking myself in, that I would vote yes on it without knowing exactly what I'm putting my people up to.
Could you raise your hand? Sarah, would you like to speak?
I would. I see this a lot with my clients in my legal practice. They come in and they think they know exactly what they want, and they want to form an entity or do some other sort of planning, and they want to lock it in with the idea that they have today. And I try to advise them down the line to leave as much flexibility in their planning as they can, because there's no way to know what circumstances will happen. And there could be some great ideas that don't fit into what today you think might be the perfect zoning overlay. We have the process to address each property individually, and I think that we should stick with that in order to maximize the development we have in these areas, because there are a lot of empty storefronts in these areas, and I think we want to be open as to how we can fill them in the best way for these neighborhoods. So I would not be in favor of locking down a certain type of zoning on these particular areas. And I live very close to MacArthur, and I see how that is, and it's been that way my whole life, and maybe that's not the best. But there's a lot of different things that could be added to MacArthur, and I'd like to have that possibility stay open.
Scott?
At this point, we're going to call for a vote, and I'm going to ask people who are definitely in favor of this idea to raise your hands yes. Please record. And those who oppose this idea? Other comments? Scott first and then Tyrone.
Just to follow,
There we go.
just to follow up on Chris, I agree there's a lot of issues involved in this, and raising your hand says, for me, says I'm open to the idea. I think it's a good idea moving forward. Doesn't mean that I'm going to lockstep my vote with that every time. One thing you'll see with me, if you've paid attention to the school board at all, I don't abstain. You're going to know where I stand whether you like it or not. So I'm raising my hand saying, right now, based on what you're talking about, I like the idea, and here's why. We need to have less of a shotgun approach with our zoning. I see this going down 9th Street, going down Peoria Road, 11th Street, down Saginaw, same idea. To where you'll have residential business, industry, residential business industry. If we had a plan in place, which goes back 2 questions ago, and we knew that we want this area to be a residential area, we want this area to be mid-sized businesses, we can start working towards drawing those folks in. I would agree also too, though, that you don't kick anyone out of their businesses. So you ensure there's a grandfathering in there. If this business has already been open, or this residential has already been there, you don't move them out. But you do have a plan moving forward that says, as we move forward, as we continue to expand, we have a plan where we want these zones to go into. And I don't think the city's been doing a decent enough job on that, especially in my area of town. With the northeast side again, this is a shotgun approach, and it doesn't work.
I said that I would vote in favor of this conceptually because over the years, you have various use enter into an area, you have grandfathered in uses, and this overlay theoretically would be some sort of way of getting a common goal addressed in the area. And conceptually, all the details would be worked out and someone would vote on the makeup of the overlay. So I voted in favor of it as a concept because you did still have control over what the actual overlay would address.
Joe, and I think that might be.
Real briefly, I wouldn't fault anyone for voting one way or the other on this because it's a complicated issue, and I think a lot of us lack background on this question. But the purpose of the overlay is essentially to relax some of the rules that might otherwise exist, to give more flexibility, for example, on minimum parking requirements or setback requirements. The overlay idea is to relax the current rules that might otherwise exist to accommodate the older commercial quarters.
All right, our next, I'm going to give a brief intro to our next question, which is also related to zoning, and I apologize for length. 20 Comprehensive Plan for the City of Springfield, created in the year 2000, specifies land use by city sector and is referenced by planning and zoning when making zoning resident recommendations to the City Council. The plan was amended in 2007, but it is out of date and inconsistent with actual land use in the city. The MacArthur Boulevard and Enos Park master plans specify uses for those neighborhoods and have been approved by the City Council. Other areas, such as the Medical District, Neighborhood of Hope, and downtown, have or are considering master plans. Even when approved by the City Council, neighborhood master plans are not part of the comprehensive plan and are not used when making zoning recommendations to the City Council. Sue?
My name's Sue Massey, and I'm involved with 2 neighborhoods in the city, both Aristocracy Hill and the Neighborhood of Hope, which is just across the tracks to the east on the near east side of town. My question, following Carol's statement there, really addresses the same things we've been talking about, and one is master city planning, but the other part of that is the ability for neighborhoods and neighborhood residents to do planning and have some of their thoughts and their preferences respected within the city. So my question is, would you vote in favor of an updated 2020 comprehensive plan that defines land use for specific areas of the city and incorporates neighborhood master plans?
You hear that? All those in favor, raise your hands. All right, we're unanimous again.
I would say Andrew, if you wish to speak, you were the last person on this list.
Yeah, I love that.
Living in Venus Park, you know, we see it every day what the plan is doing for the area, and that was a very professional plan put together, and we had a specific goal. And when my wife and I moved into Venus Park, we wanted to be part of a sense of community. They drew us in, and so we wanted to be part of that community. And so we see every day, you know, the neighbors coming together and providing input to make the neighborhood better, not only just because of ideas, but because of action. And so part of that is because, you know, we put together a professional plan and say, yes, this is what we want our neighborhood to look like. And so, yeah, I always thought that the city, when they did zoning variances, took into account other plans they put together, especially from the neighborhoods, but it sounds like that does not take place. And so I would definitely, you know, as the next alderman, look at those plans and say, yes, we need to look at those plans too while we're doing the overall city plan.
Dave?
Was there someone else? Right, for master plans with the neighborhood, the key is to get not everybody, but try to get as many involved as you can. I moved here from St. Louis. I lived in St. Louis Hills. We had a great neighborhood association, a lot of pride in the neighborhood. We had meetings regular. We had police come to our meetings and tell us what's going on. But we had that in place. Now to get that in place where it don't exist, it's going to take a little push. But an idea I had is have somebody for each precinct be a point of contact, and then down to block captains, which again is something we had in St. Louis Hills, where you really push it down to the grassroots. You're getting down as about as low as you can go, and trying to reach everybody, and not that they'll all have their own special idea, but they'll get input on the idea that's in front.
I'm in 100% agreement that, especially in my ward, that we need a master plan to deal with revitalization and development. I know years ago they did the RUDAT study, where they went through our community and identified lots and potential development areas. And I think we need to keep that going and intensify the efforts in Ward 2 for revitalization and planning efforts. Not only just make plans, follow through on plans. I mean, for so many times, for so many years, through my community organs, I organized them, and you have people put out plan after plan after plan, but nothing happens over there in my area town. So I'm all for putting together a plan that has some teeth in it, some benchmarks, some goals, and make some of these things happen in the future. So I really believe in that part of town. And I believe that we really concentrate in on Ward 2 and have a plan that we can make things happen and turn around over there. And I'm not, I mean, right now you look over there and you see a lot of houses going up and so forth. And I commend Silas Johnson and Underpaid for some of the work that Union Baptist has done over the years. So, but I just think that we just need to have a comprehensive plan, maybe review it, add to it, take from it, and move forward with it.
As someone who worked with the Lakota group on the Private Boulevard master plan, I feel it's important, and help get the city to pass it. I feel it's important that when we put these master plans into play, we should at least consider implementing them. I know the Esquire property is coming up, demolition, and we're looking for someone to develop it. But we should develop it with the idea of that master plan in mind. Because throwing up a simple strip mall does not make a cornerstone on MacArthur Boulevard. If you look at your shopping malls, what do? One end, the other, there's an anchor on each end of the shopping mall. Well, this property has potential to become an anchor on the north end of MacArthur Boulevard. And according to the master plan, it would be an anchor. Can we get that whole development the way we want it? Maybe, maybe not, but we should keep it in mind and consider it and at least make it our goal.
All right, our next question, question 8, will be asked by Carrie Becker.
I'm Carrie Becker, and I'm the president of the historic, excuse me, West Side Neighborhood Association. We are a large area. We cover 75 blocks, and they fall in wards 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Small pieces, large pieces. Okay, sorry. Our question is, would you vote to uphold zoning ordinances that honor the character and integrity of residential neighborhoods and neighborhood master plans?
Didn't hear the question. The last part of the question.
Would you vote to hold? Is this better? Yeah. Okay. Would you vote to uphold zoning ordinances that honor the character and integrity of residential neighborhoods and neighborhood master plans?
All those in favor, raise your hand. All right, we're unanimous again. Thank you. Chris?
I would say that a lot of the sitting aldermen currently keep the neighborhood associations in mind when we have zoning ordinances that come before us. I think in the 7.5 years that I've been an alderman, there's only been 2 instances I can think of where the rest of the body overturned what the sitting alderman wanted to do, and we felt that that person was not listening to their body at the time that we voted that way. When I've had issues on West Lawrence, when the Donnie Beechler property wanted to rezone because it was having difficulty getting tenants, I went to the historic West Side. We met with the owner. We looked through the different business types, and we found a good, happy medium of what businesses fit the character of the neighborhood, rather than just throwing a whole new rezoning on top of it. I did the same thing with Knox Knolls Neighborhood Association recently with the old nursing home on West Monroe. We struck out a number of things that we didn't think fit and were too close to the houses. I think that's a good approach, and I think that's the way that a lot of the council currently is going. However, I would definitely caution that there have been some rezonings that have come before the board that shouldn't have passed, and there was opposition to them. Neighborhood groups came forward. Your voice is the most important thing. If you don't oppose the ordinance, then the rest of us aldermen don't know what's going on in that ward. If Ward, I'm just going to pick on an imaginary one and call it Ward 11. If Ward 11 has something happening and Ward 11, his alderman wants to go one way or the other, but if the neighborhood associations out there don't make their opposition known, the rest of us cannot act.
No, I didn't.
At Herman.
I'm definitely in favor of the question, but there's a lot of neighborhoods in Ward 2 that don't have neighborhood associations, so how would those neighborhoods go about getting their voice heard? And then, on the other hand, how would we go about establishing the neighborhood association so they can take part in this? And then there would also have to be a time set aside with the city council so we could have a neighborhood association day where all the associations came and voiced their opinions. So,
Scott?
I agree with everything that's been said, and in my past experience in the school board, I've shown that I stand up for that. The school board, it used to be you had to wait 48 hours to come speak to us. You had to sign up 48 business hours in advance and then show up, and if you didn't sign up, you couldn't speak. So we changed our rules to ensure that members of the community could speak up at a meeting about any issue dealing with the district. So I appreciate the fact the city council doesn't have that rule, so I don't have to worry about changing it. But again, I put my money where my mouth is in terms of my votes. And I have opened up our governmental meetings in the past to ensure that we get those voices, and I'll continue to fight for that.
I would say that no neighborhood works if the people in the neighborhood don't care about it. So these neighborhood associations, some of them, for example, Enos Park, these people have put in so much time, effort, money, hard work. These are the people who value the neighborhood, and so obviously, to me, these are the people that you should listen to when you're looking at making any changes in the neighborhood. It's easy for all of us to complain about this or complain about that, but when you look at the people who have actually put their hard work into it, it's easy to listen to them because you know they put their money where their mouth is.
Jim?
I just have one quick comment. It's regarding communication. I think the neighborhood associations are absolutely a vital link between the city hall and the neighborhoods and what's going on and what they desire. However, a good alderman, I think, also has communication as far as the number one priority. And it isn't always a neighborhood association. There aren't always neighborhood associations. A good alderman has to be accessible, has to return phone calls, has to have an email address that's published, a cell phone number that's published, so that the individuals, whether it's the mom and pop in the corner or someone just anonymous citizen out in the ward, has an opportunity and has an outlet to reach out and voice their views. That's important.
Sure.
I cannot agree more with Jim. I think that you cannot say that because the area is not heavily
Thank you. I cannot agree with Jim, Donald, more. I don't think that you can say because the neighborhood does not have a neighborhood association that those people are not hardworking and they don't care about their neighborhood. Everyone who lives in the city of Springfield cares about their area. They care about where they live. They care about their quality of life. And I think that when you take on the responsibility of saying that you want to represent those individuals as aldermen, then you have a responsibility to seek them out and have a great way that they can have that conversation and have that communication with you. So it definitely is a two-way street, but all of the responsibility cannot be placed on the individuals who live in the neighborhoods. An alderman has to take on some of that responsibility and seek people out, find out how they feel about a situation before they vote on it, because you are representing your constituents. If you feel a certain way, then you have a responsibility to convey that to your constituency, but also have a back and forth conversation with them to find out how they feel about it as well. I know that I got beat up a lot on a couple of votes that I took because individuals felt that I should have voted a different way, but I was listening to my constituency. I was listening to their concerns, and it's my responsibility to convey those concerns as a member of the City Council.
Thank you. I just think this would really be an appropriate time for me to express my thanks to all of you, and especially to all of the neighborhood associations. It's one of the best things that's happened in this city in a long time, is the active involvement of neighborhood associations. And so I appreciate you. Unfortunately, we don't have neighborhood associations in Ward 10, but we have a lot of homeowner associations. And one of the things that I proposed to them is that we gather on a regular basis and begin to discuss the ideas and the issues that we have in common and look for solutions to those issues as a combined effort rather than...
All right, our next topic
is transportation planning. My
Kevin believes Springfield should support alternative modes of transportation, providing access to all areas of the city. Moving rail traffic from 3rd Street to a newly developed 10th Street corridor is critical to the future of Springfield and essential to preserve Springfield's downtown, to ensure access east of 10th Street, and to create economic development along the 10th Street corridor. Current transportation options limit access to business areas and jobs, residences, recreation, and medical services. Bus routes have restricted availability, and downtown transfers result in longer rides. Roadways designed for fast-moving through traffic put pedestrians and bicyclists in peril and result in poor walkability and decreased residential attractiveness in urban neighborhoods. Kevin Mihalchuk will ask the next question.
Thanks, Carol. First of all, I'd like to commend all of you for taking your responsibility and trying to do what is best for the community. I think it can be a higher calling, within. So I want to commend all of you for that. And it's great to be a part of democracy right here tonight. This is wonderful to watch and listen to all these ideas. And that's one thing I heard was a couple times is the listening factor that the Aldermanic responsibility, the thinking tales. And that is so important, because I know you all have ideas, but those ideas can blossom as democracy with listening. I appreciate hearing that. Keep that in mind. So a little lighter question than some of the zoning ones that we've been listening to is, do you support bicycle lanes and trails that connect commercial areas, jobs, residences, and recreation in all areas of the city?
Sure. Do you support bicycle lanes and trails that connect commercial areas, jobs, residences, and recreation in all parts of the city? It's from Harvard Park, by the way. He didn't say that, but. All those in favor, raise your hand. All right, unanimous again.
Yeah, I wanted to point out a couple of roads in our neck of the woods. If you live in Twin Lakes and you want to ride a bike anywhere, you're taking your life in your hands. You either got to take Maiden Road or you got to take Piper Road. And they're both unsafe. No, I did not. So let's not forget that. I mean, I love downtown. We're always downtown, and that seems to be where all the bike lanes come, but let's not forget where we're at. And it truly is unsafe. There's no shoulders. To walk or ride a bike on either one of the roads I mentioned would be unsafe.
This has to do with transportation, and I know we had a unanimous vote on the bike lanes, but something that we need to know about and talk about and do something about is that on the far west side, and I think it's true on the far south side, the Metropolitan Mass Transit District does not tax the property on those far outreaches. There's valuable property out there that's not contributing to our mass transportation, our buses, in other words, and we need leadership at the, probably at the mayor's level to turn this around so that we're all contributing to mass transit and so that the revenue's there, and then we can extend the routes further far west and far south, and it'll be good for the whole metro area. Thank you.
We're going to go to Billy, and then Herman, and then Sam, and then Ernie.
I support bicycle paths in the city of Springfield. I mean, it gives us more accessibility for our citizens and so forth. I just think that they need to be planned out really well so you won't create confusion like you did when they instituted the first bicycle paths. And speaking on that gentleman's last comments, I think we got too many donuts in the hole in our city. There's too many different boundaries going on where we're missing out on tax dollars, we're missing out on too many different services, and we need to get all our boundaries in line with one another. I think that's a big problem.
I fully support this, but we have to be careful because when we changed the transportation back in the early 70s, and ICC came in and closed the roads on Brown, Cass, and Pine, and Spruce. We have to be careful of the access of our emergency vehicles. So whenever we have any new transportation ideas, we need to be aware of the impact that it's going to have on the neighbors. And with the approval of the Stanton Street extension, is going to be a continuation of that bicycle path that's going to connect through to Rochester, and it's going to come down behind, over by the high school there, and it's going to go down behind through the woods and come out back by our subdivision, and then go connect to Stanton Street and go down past Bunn Park. We need to know the impact that that is going to have on the local residents also.
Thank you. The bicycle lane on Second is nice. It runs right in front of my law office, but you're still right there in the middle of traffic practically. What I'd like to see is when the 3rd Street rail finally moves to 10th, I'd like to see that 3rd Street rail corridor turn into a bike path where there's only bikes and no cars. And so bicyclists will have a place where they can feel safe, be safe, and it'll traverse a very long, area distance in the city. So it'll be great for bicyclists. Thank you.
If anyone has looked at Hanson Engineering's plan for 3rd Street after the 3rd Street corridor, after the rail is gone, you will see that it's a bike pedestrian throughway through downtown and through that corridor. But speaking as a person who helped get the Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission's bike ped plan passed through City Council, the person who sits on the Mayor's Bicycle Advisory Council, and the person who has just helped with this long-range transportation study for Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission, I can say that our work is starting to come around in Ward 7, through West Laurel, and Greenbrier, all the way out to, I can't think of the name of the road, but all the way out to where the next bike path picks up. Anyway, you see a bike share, parking share path through that those neighborhoods and Ward 7. And in the summer, and even yesterday when I was walking in that neighborhood, you see people using it, jogging, not so much biking right now, but especially jogging. That area connects to the parks. That trail actually connects almost to the Sangamon Valley Trail. You can take it and find your way to Lost Bridge Trail. 2nd Street, you see, a little controversial, but through compromise we got it done. And now, in the long-range planning commissions, we would like to see some complete streets done in Springfield, meaning that these are streets that both pedestrians, cars, trucks, bicyclists, these streets are designed with all modes of transportation, landscaped and otherwise.
Ernie, if you have time, Andrew and Sarah.
Thank you. Back when I worked for the city a couple of years ago, I got to staff the Bicycle Advisory Council, and one of the things they did and worked very diligently on was the plan with the Planning Commission for the entire city, not for just one part of the city, but for all of the city, how to get to downtown if you wanted to shop and bike to get there, or if you wanted to work and leave your bike, if you wanted to bike in other parts of the town. And it took a long time to come to the plan they came to and get agreement and to get the council to pass, but the advisory council really did a lot of work on that and should be commended for it. But it doesn't stop there. Once there's a plan, they have to implement it, and the city is finally starting to do that. There are some other ideas that are still popping along. The Route 3rd or the 3rd Street rail corridor turning into a bike pedestrian path is a good idea. But some of the advisory council people also suggested there needs to be a change station downtown. What if you work downtown, you need to wear a suit or a tie, but you want a bicycle? Maybe you want to change. Maybe you want to park your bike somewhere, take a quick shower, change, go to work. That's an option that should be done. The Bicycle Advisory Council also is instrumental in providing the impetus to get bike racks all over downtown the one with the huge Lincoln penny was their idea, and they did a tremendous job on that. So I think bicycling is a coming thing, it's a solid thing, it's good exercise, and it's good for health, and extending it to all parts of the city, I think is the best way to go.
Yeah, just really quick, when I was talking to the hospitals, they said, what's the biggest thing that, an alderman
can do for it? And they said raise the quality of life in Springfield. We have a good community, but we need to make it better. And that helps them attract talent to the hospitals. And so bike paths are a key component of that. And I can't wait until the 3rd Street corridor does turn into a bike path, because that's only 2 blocks from my house, and I'm an avid bicycler, and I go out quite a bit with my stepson Charlie, and I'm enjoying biking around. So I can't wait for that 3rd Street corridor to turn into a bike path.
Just second what Herman said earlier, that in doing these, you have to take into account the people, he said the residents, but I would say the residents and the commercial enterprises that are around these bike paths, because especially in the core downtown area, there is already a parking problem, and to the extent that any of those spaces are taken away to provide for bike lanes, you can get a big conflict there. So I would just second what he said, you have to take into account the people who are otherwise affected by these bike lanes. But again, what Andrew said, I think the 3rd Street, using that as a bike lane would be great.
Amy?
I know our discussion has been centered around bike paths and the opportunities for bikers here in the city. But I want to switch it back to other transportation options like a bus service again. What we need to do as a community is we need to make it safer for the users of the mass transit service. When they get into downtown Springfield, they are releasing the passengers into the street, which is a dangerous situation. And so as an alderman, I would work very hard at trying to do what we can to make that a change to that. We need to have a transportation center so that they are actually placed in a safe environment when they get down there. And we need to also work toward having expansion of the service into Sundays, because this is a growing community, and we need to move our transportation options as if we are planning for the future. So Sunday hours are good because people work on Sunday. They also have other things that they do in the community. They are going to recreational opportunities. So we need to make sure that our city is open for all days, and that option is open for our community. So that's it.
Very quickly. Sarah brings up a great issue about parking downtown. I have a business downtown, and I'm also a member of SDAT and DSI, and through our studies, there is not a parking shortage downtown. There might be a parking shortage in front of your door, but there is not a parking shortage downtown. When I put my parklet deck in, we lost 2 parking spaces. And as a result of that, yes, some people complained that there was no parking in front of their door or by their business. And at the other end of it, it generated more revenue for my business and sales tax than those 2 parking meters. So I think there's room for bike lanes and parklets, which will be coming more and more downtown, and less sympathy for parking at your front door. Maybe you have to park in the garage or the
Okay. Our next issue is maintaining our investment in infrastructure. ICON believes that infrastructure provides the essential foundation for Springfield's growth. Wise stewardship of our investment requires ongoing maintenance for the future benefit of the city, quality of life of its residents, and maintenance of property values. Springfield's crumbling infrastructure negatively affects residents, business, and economic development. In April of 2013, the Springfield City Council voted to approve a sales tax increase for infrastructure maintenance that will expire in 2016. Obviously, the streets, sewers, alleys, and lighting will still be here after 2016. Our next question is from Victoria Ringer.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. I really appreciate your involvement. My name is Victoria Ringer. I'm the Executive Director of Downtown Springfield Incorporated. Would you vote in favor of additional infrastructure improvements and maintenance beyond the current 3-year plan?
All those in favor, raise your hand. We are again unanimous. Let's start with the bill first.
I would like to commend our sitting alderman and the mayor for the infrastructure plan that they have put in place. But I've said before, and I'll continue to say, that it's somewhat of a Band-Aid approach to the real problem. It's nice to have streets that are overlaid and that are smooth to drive on, and the fact we've gotten rid of a lot of the potholes in the city, and that's a great thing. But we haven't addressed the underlying issues with the water mains that are ancient and with the sewers that are ancient. And as these continue to break down and we continue, love these microphones, and we continue to have to open up brand new overlaid roads so that we can address underlying issues. And I said it's like putting a Band-Aid over a festering sore. The sore doesn't go away. So we need to go further than what we've gone, and I think that that's why I voted in favor of continuing to do more and more and more with the infrastructure in our city.
When I ran for alderman almost 4 years ago, there were 4 things that I said I wanted to address, and the main thing that was top of my list was infrastructure. And again, I partnered with Alderman Jones, and we worked very, 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 very hard to put together a plan that would begin to address our infrastructure problems. It wasn't, it could never address them totally because we were so far in the hole, but it was a good first step. So I think that we definitely need to look at where we go after 2016 and do everything that we can to continue on the path that we're on now. I was very happy to see all the hands go up because when Alderman Job and I were looking for those 6 votes, there were sitting aldermen who did not support it then, so I'm happy to see that they will support it in 2016.
Yes, living in an older neighborhood, we have a lot of issues as it relates to the sewer system, and a lot of times we experience flooding due to the sewer system and the condition that it is in. We have issues in our alleyways, which they need to be paved or repaired. And what we have also with the roadway is we have the oil and chip that they put on the roads, which is something that's been going on for many, many years. We need to have a comprehensive plan that is ongoing. 3 years is a good start, but we need something that is going to reach into the future and address these issues in our older neighborhoods, because if we do not really invest in infrastructure in our community, we're going to see people leaving Springfield because their property values are not going to increase due to the fact what needs to happen first is the city invest in its older neighborhoods. And then you have more opportunities for growth in the community.
Infrastructure is one of those things, it never ends. I mean, you're never going to say, hey, we're done, because there's always something broke, there's always something that needs to be done. I worked for the Corps of Engineers, and we had locking dams on the river, and we had scheduled maintenance, because we knew, they would need repair or improvements every 15, 20 years. I'm assuming the DPW here does the same thing, but it's something I'd want to look at to see how far, how proactive are they in their infrastructure plan. I Oh, and one other thing, fairness across all wards, and again, I'm guessing that maybe that's the plan, or the plan, maybe not the case currently. But it's another thing that I really want to look into, that Ward 4 gets as much as every other ward.
Scott, Chuck, Joe, Chris, we have none.
I was walking down North 24th on Saturday talking to folks, and every single person to a head that I talked to said that their street has had problems for over 10 years and has not been fixed. I ran into one person who was moving to Riverton because he got tired of having his street be full of potholes throughout the year. They're moving, they're gone. We've lost that person. On my street, we have flooding. I joked about the Pillsbury plant being around empty as almost as long as I've been around. We have sewers that have been around since Mr. Lincoln's time. 3 years is not going to fix the problem. So I agree, we need to continue on. I do want to go into the discussion a little bit. You mentioned high-speed rail, and we started talking about bike paths on 3rd Street. We need to be aware that the 10th Street rail discussion is not done. Yes, it's going to happen, but anyone who uses North Grand, for 10 years, you're not going to be able to. You're going to have an underpass right in front of Lanphier High School, and an overpass right in front of Memorial Stadium. So it's good to talk about putting paths and everything on 3rd Street, but we need to plan for the fact that our northeast side of town is going to be shut down for 5 to 10 years. And that discussion is not happening. It needs to happen. That's one of the main reasons why I'm up here today. I've been advocating for more discussion on this as a school board member because Lanphier concerns me. It concerns me having students near that construction for a decade. But also, I live within walking distance of the 10th Street corridor. I deal with this every day. I meet people every day who are going to lose their homes because of this consolidation. We need to have a plan in place to work with those people so we don't lose them. And we need to have a plan in place to make sure the safety of our community on the northeast side of town is ensured. And I'm concerned we don't have that right now.
Three points. As a co-sponsor of the sewer infrastructure plan that we have for the city, which will raise about $50 million over the next 10 years for sewer repairs, we have to bear in mind that that part of the infrastructure program has not really got off the ground yet because we're still finalizing some low-interest loans to come from the EPA. So that's point number one. Point number two, I'd like to see a major infrastructure initiative for the residential neighborhoods. About a third of our city is composed of residential neighborhoods with homes of roughly between 60 and 100 years old that need lots of help. And what we need to do is create a fund to provide matching funds to homeowners up to, let's say, $3,000, $5,000 for roofing work, windows, furnace, electrical upgrades, gas piping upgrades, all that kind of stuff. We need to invest in our neighborhoods and create a fund to do so, and I'd like to work with the other aldermen to do that. Just by the way, some of the aldermen that voted for the road infrastructure plan did not vote for the sewer infrastructure plan. So as far as that's concerned, the reason I did not vote for the road infrastructure plan was because I thought we had an over-reliance on sales tax. We increased our sales tax 3 times in 7 years, and that was a problem because we don't want to hurt ourselves in relation to our neighbors if they have lower sales taxes. And then the other point about this is, I thought that the spending $80 million of 3 years, which is basically we're going to take 20 years of future revenue and spend it in 3 years. I thought that was not the best way to go. And the other point about it is it seemed like a re-election ploy because we're going to spend all that money and then we're going to be left without any money 3 years from now. So that was part of the thinking behind that.
My best. I think that the big thing that needs to be realized is that a lot of the aldermen who did support the increase in the tax for the 3-year plan, we did it because we felt that we had good stewards of the money. We felt that our current city council and the mayor would spend the money where we're supposed to be spent instead of it getting siphoned off into side projects or lining developers' pockets or whatever else you want to say. We kept it with local labor as much as possible, so the money is staying in the community. We're doing as much as we can with what we've got. We're trying to prove to our constituents and to all the voters that we're going to spend the money wisely. If we do that, then we should be able to come back to you and say, here's our next plan. If we don't do it, then you should get rid of us and you should bring people in who you can trust.
Doris, can you keep it brief?
I just want to address the rail issue very quickly. I have been very involved with the whole 10th Street.
I have been very involved with the whole 10th Street Rail, 3rd Street consolidation since its inception. As a matter of fact, I served on the county board 10 years before I came to the city council, and that was the one project that I brought with me. That's how long I've been involved with this. And I will tell you that, and I'm currently serving on the overarching coordinating committee. And there is a plan. This is not something that's just happening willy-nilly. There is a plan. It's a very comprehensive plan. It will be done in increments. No part of the city is going to be shut down. There's contingencies in place for all of that, so don't get upset, don't get worried. And there is also a process in place for an ombudsman that is working with individuals who may be in the process, who may have their properties affected by the consolidation. So there is a plan. It's a comprehensive plan. We meet on a regular basis for contingencies that happen along the way, and there is an ombudsman that is working very, very closely with all property owners to make sure that everyone is dealt with in a very fair and equitable manner.
I'm going after you. Just let's back up a second on infrastructure. The reason that we're in the mess we're in today is because we haven't had a full infrastructure plan in over 20 years. And Mayor Houston and several members on the city council took the initiative to put a plan forward that we felt best that could address our needs at this point in time. Yes, we understand there's a major sewer problem, and we're addressing that. It's going to take, as Joe said, many, many years to address our sewer problems because we've kicked the can so many years. So this generation is going to be paying for the previous mistakes that were made when we didn't fully fund infrastructure. We're doing that. I don't think any resident in the city of Springfield is complaining that their worst streets have been overlaid over the last year, and then the next to the worst and continue will be overlaid next year and the year after. I don't see anybody complaining out there if your streets are being overlaid or your sidewalks are being done. In addition, with the gaming revenues that we're generating, which is over $1 million a year, the city's portion, that's now going to overlay our much needed alleys in the capital city that have been very difficult to drive down, very difficult to navigate, and that is being addressed with gaming revenues. But I think we've got to look at how we plan our city going forward, because the more roads and the more development we build in empty cornfields, in 15 or 20 years we're going to have to address those sewer problems, those infrastructure problems and needs, just like the issues we're dealing with within the urban core. So the new development out west and south, which is very beneficial to the entire city, we're going to have to address those infrastructure needs going forward in the next 15 or 20 years. So infrastructure maintenance is never going away. The need for funding for infrastructure will never go away. We have to find a realistic approach to finance and fund it going forward.
Our next issue and our last question is about neighborhood revitalization. Volunteer neighborhood leaders who are working diligently to clean up and revitalize their neighborhoods deserve the support of the City of Springfield. The current complaint-driven process in which neighborhood leaders are required to work across city departments to address various problems within their neighborhoods, often for the same property, is difficult to understand, time-consuming, and prevents efficient and proactive resolution to problems. The City of Springfield should do more to facilitate the efforts of neighborhood associations and other organizations by ensuring coordination and cooperation between city inspectors, city police, and city legal and the neighborhoods. Jane Holt will ask the next question.
Hi, I need to learn how to use this. There you go.
here, this one's on.
Test, test. 30 seconds left.
I'm Jen Abel. I don't know how to use a microphone. And I represent Lincoln Park Neighborhood Association, which also helped to establish a newly formed foundation for Oak Ridge Cemetery. Would you support consolidated access to city resources and an increased focus on neighborhood revitalization by having city inspectors, city police, and city legal work together as part of a neighborhood revitalization department?
All those in favor, please raise your hands. All those opposed? All right. Court?
This tech, oh, there we go. Well, first, again, I very much appreciate these questions, but I think it's difficult to answer yes or no. I think in theory, it's a good idea, a good practice, but that function would start at the mayor level. I think maybe those are questions, some of these questions you should be asking the 5 candidates for mayor. Because,
did.
Okay, all right, thank you. I bet you did. But let's keep in mind, I think an alderman, current running, the key is communicating with your neighborhood leaders or your neighbors or neighborhood associations or homeowner associations. Get residents more active in their ward. I'll give you a prime example of what we've done in Ward 6. Polly Poskin, who's the Harvard Park Neighborhood Association president, I didn't even know who Polly Poskin was 4 years ago until I knocked on her door one day. She didn't know me. 4 years later, Polly and I are probably best friends. She chairs my Ward 6 fund, which is a 501c3 not-for-profit fund, and we've raised and given back nearly $50,000 to projects in Ward 6. We've given away $15,000 in grants to homeowners to renovate the exterior of their properties, and that's not because of me, and not because of Polly, that's because a very active board who are made up of business owners and residents in Ward 6 and neighborhood associations who care about the future of our ward. So aldermen have to be proactive in how they reach out to residents in their neighborhood, but also be proactive in reaching out to the police department, to the public works department, to the building department. You have to have that open line of communication or you will get nothing done and your ward will suffer.
Just really quick, I think what you're trying to describe is like a neighborhood coordinator who will kind of rally those city departments together, kind of focus on the key issues that are affecting the other city neighborhoods. So that's vitally important. I think we need to bring the neighborhood coordinator to the forefront that'll accomplish that task. In Ward 5, I've been walking door to door and talking to neighbors and residents there, and a lot of them think we're the forgotten ward. We're not getting our fair share of city resources for whatever reason. And so it does take a strong alderman to make sure that we are getting our fair share. As a prime example is, I don't know if anybody's here from the Oak Ridge Neighborhood Association, or, no, because that's a neighborhood association that had an issue and then no longer is continuing. And so when I was knocking on the door of somebody in Oak Ridge, they said, who can I go to? I don't know who to go to now to deal with these halfway houses that are affecting my neighborhood. And I said, you call your alderman, and that should be your fallback to make sure that you have a good line of communication and to make sure you're staying after those properties that are causing you issues. And one of the halfway houses they've had there has been 12 years, and I don't know why that halfway house is continuing to operate.
Sarah, Jim? I just want to clarify, I voted against that. I'm all in favor of better coordination. I'm just not in favor of another government department to do that. I agree with Andrew. I think a lot of that coordination can be done by your alderman. If you're having problems getting through to any particular department, having the departments coordinate, I think that is the job of an alderman to step in that process and help you get that coordination. I just don't think another department is the answer.
Jim,
Sure, and I'll be brief. One of the things that I was able to do when I was with City Hall is there were instances where the issue would arise and we would need to bring city departments together. So your point's well taken, Sarah. It's a good alderman or a good administrator in the mayor's office always has the ability to bring people together, the right people in the room. But I think, again, getting back to the point I made earlier, one of the most important things is, and one of the things I pledged to do, those of you who are Ward 9 or you just live in the city of Springfield, is I'm going to be knocking on your door. Okay, that's a threat. I'm going to be knocking on your door. I'm going to be attending your neighborhood meetings. We're calling meetings throughout the ward, the neighborhoods, and I'm going to be there for you. And I have the ability, I think, to bring the right departments and the right people together. Whether it's police, fire, public works, sometimes you have to bring them all three together. Housing department, they all got to come together and address issues. So it's been done in the past, it can be done again in the future. And I think a good alderman who has that communication, has that outreach built in, has that network in place, which is something I pledge to do, will make it happen. This one works though.
Well, let's hope it keeps working. Just so that you know, I've been knocking on a lot of doors in Ward 10. And I find a lot of the people in Ward 10 don't feel like they're getting their fair share either. So that may be the case in every ward in the city. In fact, when we were talking about roads earlier, and I'm looking over there at Chuck, and I'm thinking some of the worst roads in the city are the roads around the lake. And so, we've got a problem in the whole city. And as aldermen, we have to address the problem citywide, not just ward by ward. And I think the key here is communication. I was really happy with what Sarah said because, I voted for that, but I cringed because I was thinking, all we need is another department in city government to try to take care of something that ought to be done without having to create another department. So I guess I would just say, you guys got a lot of great questions tonight, but some of them are very difficult to answer as a yes or no.
we're going to go Joe, Sam, and Doris, about 30 seconds each.
Real briefly, calling something by a different name doesn't solve a problem or make a problem go away. We've already created, hopefully tonight, an economic planner. We've got our neighborhood police officers. But most importantly, we've got aldermen that can coordinate and draw folks together to work together. And we've got our neighborhood association to do that. And you are the coordinating bodies to bring people together. So that's part of the reason for the way I voted. Thanks.
Sam, you're next.
Okay, thanks.
I think your question stems from, I believe it's the City of Peoria has a Department of Neighborhood Revitalization that's designed to concentrate all the departments together to revitalize the older neighborhoods. And one problem we've had in Springfield is it seems that the resources are flowing away from the older neighborhoods. And we need to bring that back to our urban core is the core. That's the basis of this city. That's where we started. And we have to revitalize those neighborhoods. So I think if it's working in Peoria, why can't it work here in Springfield? And an alderman's job is to represent the people that live in his ward. That's what I've tried to do, even in places where there's no neighborhood association. We've had a controversial zoning issue. I've gone door to door to see what's on their mind with regard to that issue. Thank you.
Doris, and then Mike.
That's a very, very good concept. It's a very, very good concept, and I do agree with it. I don't think it necessarily has to be a new city department. I'm not advocating for a new city department, but I think that it does work in everyone's best interest when there are specific point people that are familiar with those issues and that you can go to, and you don't have to sift through, this one. Of course, good aldermen have lines of communication open with all of the directors, but sometimes it takes a while for a director to get back to you, and then they have to go to talk to someone, and it slows things down. So if there is a point person identified within those departments, you have the ability to go directly to that point person, and they know why you're calling, they know what the issues are, and they know how to readily resolve them. So not necessarily a new department, but just a point person that has been identified that can work your problem.
Mike, for 30 seconds, Ernie.
Yes, I know we have in front of us all the great aldermen that are here or to be in Springfield in every ward. But unfortunately, not every citizen in this city is represented by a good alderman in the past, in the present, and probably in the future. These people are the people that need the protection. If you look at how Peoria did it, because I'm a member of ICON and I go to the meetings, if you look how Peoria did it, they did it without hiring extra staff. They did it like the way Doris Turner said. They brought point people together who were already employed by the city and formed that committee with them doing the job without extra pay or extra money. And that's what's important. They found a creative way to solve the solution that protected the citizens of their city.
Sooner or later. I agree with everyone who has said that the issue is not creating another department. Our neighborhood association has learned, as many of you have learned, that your best ally is your neighborhood police officer. That person can help you investigate, help you figure out what the problem is, and can help get you to the person to get a resolution to the problem, whether it be somebody in zoning or someone else. So relying on the NPO is probably one of the best things to do, and that's one of the things that we've done already. Here again, as alderman, what I would do is get in there with you, meet with you, figure out what the problem is, and sit down with the various people and assemble that team, because I think it's the teamwork that gets the problem solved. We have one from each department working on it and making it happen.
Carol, Tony asked, and he hasn't said much all night, so Tony.
I just want to say basically it's all about communication. I mean, I've been as accessible as I can. I mean, I think that's important. I'm past president of the Grants Ridge Homeowners Association. Associations are important. Churches are important. Civic organizations. You try to keep the line of communication open with everybody. I think I'm the only Aldermanic candidate here that's had a monthly meet and greet since September. So I think that's the most important thing, is being as accessible as you can.
Thank you. That's the end of our question and answer session. Thanks to all of our candidates for sharing their ideas and visions for Springfield. Thanks to St. John's and the Dove Center for hosting us. Thanks to ICON members, neighborhood associations, and partner organizations who are working hard to improve all of Springfield's older neighborhoods. Because one of ICON's goals is to raise awareness that our inner city has great neighborhoods in which to live, I want to mention the people who have spoken tonight: Michelle Higginbotham from Enos Park, Judy Ingham from Vinegar Hill, Kevin Mihalchek from Harvard Park, Lisa Scott from Springfield SDAT, Brian Johnsrud and Carrie Becker from Historic West Side, Victoria Ringer from Downtown Springfield, David Farrell from MacArthur Boulevard, Tony Nudo from the Landlords Association, Jen Aholt from Lincoln Park, and I want to thank the ICON members who worked so hard to put this on tonight. Steve Combs, our Vice President, Polly Poskin from our steering committee, Sharon and Daryl Riffey. Daryl's on our steering committee, and Sharon heads up our City Council Watch, and she's at the City Council. They're at the City Council every single week. Marty Vandiver is our secretary. He's our greeter tonight. Dee Stevens, Susie Weisberg, Kathy Twyman, and our parliamentarian is Karen Jacobs. Thanks to all of you for helping tonight. Finally, I want to say that you don't have to move to live in a better neighborhood. We're asking you for 6 votes on the City Council to make a difference in the City of Springfield.